All right, everyone. Greetings, welcome, college students and graduates. Thank you for joining today's episode of Power Up IT. In essence, meet the expert. Because guess what? You all are experts at being college students. Believe it or not, you actually have a career and a profession that is valuable to our audience. And as we all know, that Power Up IT is about creating opportunities, options, and learning about different careers and choices and gaining that information so you can make those good and solid choices in your education and in your career, or if you just want a job. You know, a lot of the times we end up talking about you got to go to a 4-year degree, you got to do this, you got to do that. But the reality of it is, um, there's so many different paths to be successful and to get through school. In this particular day, we are highlighting you, successful college students and graduates, and we're going to share a little bit about your experiences, and you can certainly ask questions that you always were curious about when you were in high school. So welcome. I'd like to, and I'm sure that this is all been out there on the publicity, but I'd like to share that Lindsey Wilson. Hey, Lindsey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves real quick, but Lindsey, do you want to share your, your college level, your maybe just real short, brief introduction, and then I'll follow with Amiyah and Tariq.
Okay, sure. So I'm from here, Minneapolis. I graduated from Spelman College in 2018, and now I'm getting ready to go back to school to get a second bachelor's degree in cognitive science. My first bachelor's degree was in psychology.
Oh, fantastic. That is fantastic. All right, and then we're going to go to Amiyah.
So I am originally from Indiana, but went to school in Minneapolis, well, St. Paul, Twin Cities.
Yay.
And now I go to University of Northwestern St. Paul, and I'm a computer science major, and I'm going into my second years.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Tariq.
Hey, my name is Tariq Abdul-Quddoos. I'm originally from Minneapolis, but grew up in both Minneapolis and St. Paul. I currently go to St. Cloud State, and I'm finishing up my last year as an electrical engineering major.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining us. And you represent 3 different areas of college. We have a graduate, we have a soon to graduate, and then we have a entering sophomore. So this is fantastic. So we should get a bunch of good, healthy dialogue here. One of the questions that always seems to come up is, why did you pick the school that you picked? And so why don't we go in reverse order? And Tariq, can you share why you picked the school that you picked and any background that led up to that?
Mm-hmm. So for me, St. Cloud was the most financially responsible school to pick. Coming out of high school, the schools that were at the top of my list were schools like Tuskegee and Purdue A&M and North Carolina A&T. But with all those schools, I wasn't able to get the financial resources I needed. And so St. Cloud still offered a good engineering program or a good program in the sciences all around, it was in state and wasn't too expensive. And so for someone like me who has planned to go as far as to get my master's and possibly my PhD, I had to think about how I wanted to engage with the financial aspect of things, as far as, do I want to pay a bunch for my bachelor's and then pay a large sum for my master's and a large sum for my PhD, or do I want to get my bachelor's and then engage in those bigger programs for my master's, my PhD? And so, like I said, for me, it was just, in terms of the long term, it was the best financial option.
Can't disagree with that. We have to watch our dollars, absolutely. So Maya, you also go to school here locally. Can you share a little bit about your decision-making process on why you ended up at Northwestern St. Paul?
Yeah, I'm kind of like the same way. I really want to go to an HBCU. My mind was set on an HBCU all 4 years of college. And then I came across a full-ride scholarship called the Act 6 Scholarship. And I was I was looking forward to applying and seeing what would happen, but I was really nervous because I didn't want to stay in Minnesota at all. I wanted to leave. I was like, I'm out. I did a lot of my life here. I want to go. And then it was a lot of phases. I ended up getting to the next phase. And then eventually I ended up getting it. And it was just overall the best financially, like the greatest decision I guess I could make financially in my life, because overall I don't want to be in a lot of debt. And you really can't beat a full ride. So I think it would have been a kind of bad decision to, say no to a full ride and then go somewhere. So yeah, I guess just financially it was the best decision for me. And, I kind of also want to, like, as I thought about it, I wanted to be in an environment where I would be uncomfortable and I would be, in a place where I had to work extra hard and be in a place where I'm kind of the only one and I have to prove myself. So I think personally that's good for me, but yeah, I guess that's why I picked the school I go to now. So
Fantastic. And Lindsey, share with us about your decision-making process to go and why you went to the college you went to.
So I chose Spelman because my number one thing was getting out of Minnesota. I wanted to experience life out of Minneapolis, and I also wanted to attend an HBCU because before going to Spelman, I never had a single African-American teacher or really a person of color teacher. I went to Minneapolis Public School District, but the students were diverse, but not so much the staff. So I wanted to experience, life outside of here. And honestly, it was probably the best decision I ever made. My parents always pushed me to leave, and they told me if you don't like it, you can always come back. But if you don't leave, it may be hard to leave afterwards. So that's why I chose Spelman. And for the cognitive science degree, I'll be going to Mankato. Since I'm back in Minneapolis, it's a really good program. I've heard great things about it. And also it's less expensive than trying to go out of state or to a different program.
Okay. All right. So the next question is going to go to Amiyah. So Amiyah, when you were in high school, what were some of the things that you think contributed, or maybe even earlier in childhood, that contributed to pursuing the type of degree that you're going after today, and why? Any advice you can give to the high school students to help them figure out, oh yeah, I kind of do that?
Well, for me personally, I guess it was just at home and being able to do little stuff for, my mom, and being able to fix things here and there. And I feel like that's when I first really noticed, like, this is, not only can I do it, but this is really fun. This is kind of cool to see that end result and to see that I fixed this thing. And I started to think about it and actually started to realize that I can make this a career. And overall, just for me jumping into it, and then I joined Girls Who Code at the U of M. And even if it was just trying it out and see if I liked it, I think that was the biggest thing for me, is jumping into things. If they seem fun, jump into it and see how you like it. And then eventually this could become a career. And that's how it was for me. I just loved Girls Who Code. And then after that, I joined the computer science program at my school and just kept doing things. And it was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I really enjoy. And just seeing the outcomes with it, you'll always have a position. You'll always have somewhere to be after. It kind of just like sets you up for life. And for me personally, you're having a lot of fun doing it. So yeah, that would be my take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Lindsey, so why did you pick the degree, your first degree, and what were you doing in high school that led you towards that degree?
So I'm going to be honest. Looking back, I don't really know why I picked psychology. Spelman is a small school and we don't have a ton of majors. I had gotten introduced to computer science when I first got to Spelman, and I've always liked working on computers. I like doing things with technology, but a lot of the girls in my dorms who were in the program kind of scared me out of, pursuing that degree. They talked about how hard it was. So I never even took an introductory course. I kind of just stuck it out with psychology. It was I didn't enjoy the sciences, like biology and chemistry. I wasn't huge on writing like an English major would have to do. So I kind of just, went with psychology. I took a psychology class in high school. So I kind of just stuck it out there. And after I graduated, these first 2 years, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I was going to go into speech pathology. I didn't get into the program, so I kind of had to change gears and figure out, what is it that I really want to do? So I went back to what I originally thought. I took an introductory course at through Harvard. They have an online learning certificate that I'm in right now, Introduction to Computer Science. So I'm doing that right now, and I really enjoy it. So I realized that I'm going to take that further next step and get a cognitive science degree, which is kind of going into artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I can still include my psychology degree while going towards that.
That's cool. So when you came out, one piece of that is that, what about employment? I mean, so to take like I'll just cut to the chase. Why would you take psychology? And what does that have anything to do with artificial intelligence or cognitive learning? Can you explain that to the audience?
Yeah, so the whole point of artificial intelligence or machine learning is to try to get a computer to react and think like a human. So you kind of have to understand the brain and why humans make the certain decisions that they do to try and code that into a computer.
So make the computer or robot or whatever it is act and behave and react like a human.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's where the artificial and the intelligence piece come in.
Yep.
Okay, very good. And now to Tariq. Tariq, can you share with us in high school what you were doing, the things that you got into, and what inspired you to be in a technology-focused program like you're in?
Mm-hmm. So I said, growing up in inner cities, I feel like we've had a lot of unacknowledged genius, and the people who were around me that were older than me were just that. And so I have people around me who were doing things like, fixing their own cars and so for someone like me who's young, that's like an amazing feat. Or, these machinists or, these people who just engage in different levels of technology. And I wanted to follow that field because they were doing it originally. And so when I first wanted to engage within the field, which was when I told my uncle that I want to do something having to do with physics, he bought me this little board called an Arduino, and then I started programming every day. And so that's what led me into programming. And then I started engaging with electromagnetics and trying to make, my little personal at-home motors. And as I engaged with this material more, I was able to engage with more of these people who, in my mind, were like geniuses, and I was able to work alongside with them and come up with new solutions for them. And so it was, taking what we already have in the inner city that, like I said, is unacknowledged, and kind of exploring in those fields a little bit, which eventually led me to electrical engineering.
Man, so that's how you got into EE, electrical engineering. Mm-hmm. So it was really the stimulus of I love how you phrase that, the unacknowledged genius. And that's a term that I had never even thought of using, but that's actually exactly right. How many geniuses do we know? And it's like, how'd you figure that out? And also to the Arduino board, so that really got you inspired in electrical and then the programming pieces of it, right? So with that, from a very deep technology perspective, when you got that board, like, how did it come? How did it get packed? What did you actually challenge yourself on to figure out and learn that was really hard that you might have wanted to give up on? Did you reach that point where you wanted to give up on it, but you kept going, Tariq?
So I don't think that I ever found a point where I wanted to give up on it, because every problem, led to more questions. And at this time, this was a summertime until I had, quite a bit of time on my hands. And so for each question, I wanted to find a solution. And so it wasn't really much frustration, but it was more of a building of curiosity.
Got you. So what would you give advice to like a high school student? How would I go about getting an Arduino board? Or like if you had to just tell a college student high school student, where would you start if they were kind of intrigued by, the technology and whatnot? Where would you tell them to start? What would you suggest?
So particularly over north, I can't remember what library we worked at for your program. I don't remember what it was called.
It was North Hennepin Park or North Hennepin region, up there off of, what was that? Dowling and Fremont, somewhere in there.
but they have the materials there that is open for community use, as far as I know. So that's one way to engage. But outside of that, you know, YouTube University was a beautiful thing for me when I first started engaging with this material, because I would try to figure out new projects to take on every single day, and I use YouTube to kind of guide me through those problems, and then from there I was able to, you know, find new solutions or find new things to do. And then I also utilized a lot of the local electronics that we have that were no longer being used, and so because that, you know, that's around all of us, and so I would find ways to take them apart with whatever tools I had at the time, and then try to see what the circuit components in the board did and what they were. And if I were able to get them out by soldering the piece out, I'll try to solder the piece out and use it on my own electronics. So it's just using the things that we had that were already around and trying to, you know, put them to new uses.
Gotcha. So you were kind of cavalier. You just started taking stuff apart, soldering stuff back together. Had you ever made any mistakes that you regret? Would you advise somebody not to do?
So I don't want to advise anybody not to do anything. Well, because I feel like when you do make mistakes, you learn a great deal from them. Although, so I guess you have to kind of gauge what may be dangerous. And so, like, one of the things I will say that I did that was dangerous one time was trying to hook up a transformer directly into a wall and then almost like hit it with like a bare transformer. And so I say don't do things like that. Try to, if you are doing a project that deals with high power, gauge how dangerous it may be. But as far as, you know, the Arduino, things like that, I would say take advantage of whatever you have, because each mistake will lead to a new learning opportunity.
Absolutely. And, you know, I have to play coy. I'm the host, so I got to ask you questions that create very interesting responses. So, and plus, I'm scared of electricity. Plumbing and electricity, I leave it to y'all because I don't deal with that stuff. So, and I'm grown. So, Amiyah, anything, any projects or anything that you wanted to give up on? I know that your application process was rigorous, but when you were in high school, was there any point in your high school, either activities or, you know, did you always have an opportunistic look at what you were doing? Did you ever want to give up on anything or quit because it was so hard?
I mean, I've been through a lot of hard things, but I feel like I'm just a person that is really determined, to the point where it was like, you know what, I'm going to try to make this work no matter what. But I feel like, well, I started off in Girls Who Code, so it was an environment with all girls, people that look like me, and we're all really interested in the same thing. And then after that, I joined the AP Computer Science course at my school. And that's when I noticed that it's not a lot of girls that do what I do, and let alone people that look like me. So I think that was like the hardest thing for me to kind of see, that it's not a lot of people that look like me, and it's not a lot of people that, you know, are like me that want to do this. And I think that was like the hardest thing to see as well. And I kind of got a little nervous, and can I do this? And kind of like, you know, look down on myself and if this is even right. But I think that now that I did things like that AP Computer Science course, and I eventually did Genesis Works, where I got an internship out of that. Now that I see that I'm accomplishing this, it kind of just makes me feel like not only am I doing this, but I'm a person that doesn't look like anybody else doing it. So I think for me, that was probably the hardest thing to do, is to be in a group where it's only me and to try to like prove myself every single day. But overall, at the end of it, it's like, wow, like it feels so much better to finish those things and to accomplish those things, because I did it with a lot of, you know, personal thought on my mind. So I think that would be the hardest for me, just being the only one sometimes. But like I said, it makes it feel so much better when I do accomplish it, because it's like, you know, I was one of the only people that accomplished this that look like me. So yeah.
That's fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. Do you have any projects that you have worked on that you learned a lot in while you were in high school?
Yeah, so like I said, I started off with the Girls Who Code program at the U of M. And one of the main projects that I did is I made a homework help website, just doing something that I thought would be beneficial. And then my school acknowledged it and used it in some of the classes. So that was really amazing for me because I got to see the end result. And the homework help website was really hard because that's where I started off. I didn't really know about coding. I didn't know what Java was. I didn't know what C++ was. I didn't know what colors would look good on a website. So that was really difficult for me because, like I said, I was just clueless and I was just coming into it. But kind of like I said, it was just amazing to see that, I made something. I made something from scratch, and got to see, kids at my school use it and actually benefit from it. So yeah.
Wow, that is awesome. And I'm glad that you shared that, because I think one of the reasons why I ask questions from a negative or pessimistic perspective is because I want y'all to shine, and because life is not easy, right? We're in the midst of very tumultuous times, unprecedented times with COVID and the social impact that we're currently having. And then you top it off with school is hard, learning is hard, life is hard. And so having that perseverance and grit to get through things is really important. And I think if you have something that you're pursuing, you got to stick with it. And that's what I've heard from all three of you. And so to Lindsey, it's a little bit different question, but it's kind of the same question, but a little bit different. But I'm going to talk about your future degree and ask you, what do you think after getting a 4-year degree in psychology and not necessarily having the similar backgrounds in tech and that interest yet, at your early age, what do you think your biggest challenges are going after your artificial intelligence degree?
Ooh,
Sorry, tough question, I know.
it is. I would say that one of the biggest challenges is just the thought of even going back to school for another 4-year degree. There's a lot of times that I doubted myself. I think coming out of already have been at a school for 4 years, there's this perception that you get out of college and you just get a job right away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I've watched a lot of girls that I went to school with, in these high paying jobs, great jobs. And, social media is also an illusion. The way that I perceive it may not be what their life is, but from the outside looking in, it looks great. So for me, it was a struggle, going 2 years without having any sort of like full-time work or, steady work. It's just hard, trying to get back into the mental mind space of going back to school and, pursuing another degree. But I've also learned that not everyone has the same path. There's no linear path to getting a job or doing what you want to do. And it's better that I found out early that this is something that I want to go into than, wasting my time doing a job that I don't enjoy, only to find out later that this is truly what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And you, like you said, you learned early and you adapted and you shifted and you are able to adjust all within a relatively, comprehensible period of time. And I think one of the things that we do at Power Up IT in the schools is we have these things called life planners. And really it just gives a student an opportunity to sit down and think about their life beyond age 25, right? A lot of times, many of us don't look at a strategic look at our life, and they just look at the next thing is get a driver's license, get a job, and then they're not thinking about beyond that. And many of the students that end up in these computer science classes, they take coding and then they, without really understanding what it's about. And that's beautiful because you can learn to code or not. And there's certainly nothing wrong with you trying something and figuring out, I actually don't like that. And then you talk to a professional that sits in a cubicle all day and writes code. You're not really down with that, but you might want to be an entrepreneur. You might want to be an independent contractor. You might want to do some things that are really life-changing. Maybe you could change society. And so starting with Amiyah, if you had to, you talked about your homework help website, but today, everything, not just recent events, but if you had to solve a problem with an app or with hardware, with something in technology or engineering, and I know this could be a tough question, so you certainly can pass, but if you had to do something that you think technology could solve, what would you pick to solve in our world?
Well, for me, I am actually minoring in social justice. So my big thing is kind of like putting technology and mixing it with social justice problems. That's something that's really passionate to me. And people kind of look at me like, how do those mix? Like how computers and racism, like I don't see it. But for me, I think just the fact that technology is the future at the end of the day, and being able to make things like apps where people of color can come together and make things where you can get connected with people over here and people over here about some of the struggles that you go through with being a person of color in America. I think that's something I'm passionate about, and even right now, it's a lot going on, especially in the Twin Cities. So I think just kind of bringing technology or making some type of app where it's like, I've had this struggle and I can talk to someone else that's had this struggle. And just, being open other than social media, other than kind of like Lindsey was saying, there's an illusion and it's kind of just like all happy things on some of the social media sites. So sometimes making things that are just super, super bare, and just talking about a lot of the things that we go through it as people of color. I think that would be an amazing thing to put technology towards for me personally. So yeah, that's something I could think of.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. Tariq, same question. If you had to pick any one thing to solve within the world's problems or improve on, right? What would you pick?
I would have to go with two. One would be trying to find ways for technology to help our mental health rather than hinder it as it has done. Now, of course, there are methods that are used where it does help, but be more expansive upon that and be more intentional about implementing things for people that look like us. And second is finding more efficient and better means, not necessarily efficient, but means of virtual learning, especially for times like these for people who look like us, because we know there's a lot of disparities as far as technology goes within the inner cities compared to the suburban places. And so we're running into a lot of problems with that. And so how can we use, or how can we enhance the technology we have to make those, the learning tools we have easier for students to engage with, even when they go back to school, because virtual learning, I think, is something that's going to continue even, past this pandemic.
Yeah, I would concur with that. That's definitely reality. And the one, people we always talk about the negative things, right? And I'm just as guilty of trying to stimulate positive optimism out of the pessimistic. But the reality of it is, the one thing that America and the world had to do is they had to pivot real quickly on gathering, spending a lot of money for overpriced, food and coffee and products and everything, to actually figure out what you got to do at home. And then the only way that you can really conduct business is virtual. And so while we're on that particular topic, all three of you went to a physical public school, and I'm throwing an extra bonus question in here because it could be relevant coming up in the fall. What if you couldn't go back to school if a high school student or a college student, based on everything of your experiences, and I'm gonna go to Lindsey first, what if you couldn't go back to the physical school and everything you had to do in school and your social life was virtual? I know this is a wild question, but what's your reaction to that, Lindsey?
I would be disappointed. I love going to school. I love seeing my friends every day. I even talk with my friends now from high school, and we talk about how we wish we could go back for a day or two just to, relive everything we went through. So I think I would definitely be disappointed. And I think as a high schooler, it's definitely hard to stay focused in distance learning, especially if you don't have the technology. It's easy to I know I liked sleeping when I was in high school. It's hard to, get motivated to get up, do your work, stay on top of things when you don't have your teacher right there in your face checking on you every single day.
So Tariq, answer that same question since you kicked it off. What if you couldn't, I mean, obviously you're going to graduate, so you probably don't care. You're probably happy to get out of school, but, and you identified master's and doctorate, PhD. So what if you couldn't go back to a physical school and you had to finish those degrees? And then secondarily, how do you think a high school student feels about it?
Are you saying as a college student, how would I feel if I couldn't go
Yeah,
back?
answer both ways. If you were high school and where you're currently at.
I think that I would be, as in my position right now, I think that I would be really, really disappointed because, as I've gone through my college career, I found new materials to engage in, and a lot of the resources to engage with that material is at the university. So they have, specific machines that I use to analyze certain things that I just don't have the resources to get at home. And so I would be disappointed, but at the same time, I always have the learning doesn't just stop, and so you have to find new ways to engage with it, just as I've had to do in our current situation. As a high school student, I think that it's even more frustrating than as a college student because, I mean, your whole entire career has been, or your whole entire educational career has been going to school continuously for however many hours per day. And then you never had to learn like this. In college, you have to do a lot more independent learning. And so you don't really get that transition that a lot of college students get to the independent learning because you're just stuck in this state where you're never really given those resources to, make that transition. So I think that's a huge part that's frustrating about it. I think another frustrating part about it is that you don't have the same level of help with the material that you may need in challenging subjects. Because we talk about the strain of the students, there's also a huge strain on our educators also. And so our educators can only, divide themselves up so much past their school hours. We know students need to engage in material, especially now, past the regular school hours. And so how do we make it so our educators are able to feed into that also?
Understood. Would you have, based on your current experience, do you have any tips or tricks that you learned to overcome the past 2 or 3 months of being on quarantine or stay at home?
I think one of the main things that has gotten me through it academically is that, so with all this extra time I have, where I'm not having to go to like meetings or school organizations with stuff, I've been able to engage even more with the material that I'm engaging, even if it's not for a class that I'm taking. And so I've been able to fill in a lot of space with that and keep my mind, focused on many different things. I'm still engaging with my schoolwork, but I'm also engaging with the things that I wasn't necessarily able to do while I was had this really, really busy schedule. And so I think that in a sense, that kept me sane.
Gotcha.
It made me engage with academics at all times, even if they weren't for my particular class.
Gotcha. All right, Amiyah, if what is your opinion on that particular question? If you had to stay virtual and not be able to go back into school, and then what tips or tricks do you have for the high school student that would that you could share with them?
Well, for me personally, I was excited about it at first. I am actually an introvert, so I like being in my own space and being like by myself a lot of the times, especially when it comes to learning. I was, a lot of people are like, I'm so sad, but I was like, I'm kind of excited. But then like as the time went on, it was like, okay, like I need that physical interaction, especially when it comes to professors. I was a first year, so just practicing how to use resources on campus and just practicing how to like go to a tutor and things like that I didn't have in high school. I started to notice how valuable those were and just overall how much they helped me. So like I said, at first I was really excited. I was like, you know what, this is kind of going to be fun. I get to be at home. I don't have to deal with waking up and walking all the way to class. And in the winter time, that was crazy. But like I said, as the time went on, it got so much harder to not have that face-to-face interaction, especially with my professors when it comes to, coding and being able to show them like, this is the code that I don't get and things like that. So, and for a high school student, I guess just some tips that helped me in college with the whole quarantine is just writing like little positivity like notes and just being able to stay positive, because it's really hard to stay positive right now with everything going on. And on top of that, you're kind of trying to teach yourself a lot of the material that teachers taught you face to face. So just like learning how to be positive. And like I said, for me personally, I write like little positivity notes in my planner, or even like little things like that, having a planner and being able to, you know, write things down that you have to do, and just being able to check them off when you're done. That overall can help so much, especially right now, because we're used to teachers like giving us this and being face to face and this is what you have to do. So now we kind of have to be, you know, a little bit of our own teachers in a lot of instances. So yeah, I guess that's some tips that I have. But yeah, I was excited at first, but now I'm just like, please fall. I'm hoping that we get to go back. So yeah.
Totally understand. And there's only one more question that I'm gonna ask everybody to recap, but I'm gonna let Lindsey answer that same question. Is, you know, if you've obviously graduated, now you're going back for a second degree, but if you had to stay virtual 100%, which might be the case, and then what tips or tricks, advice that you can give to that high school student that now is thrust into this virtual world, and if they couldn't go back to campus to their own high school?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Amiyah there. For me, a planner helps tremendously. I think being able to mark something off that I've done for the day is definitely a satisfaction, and it motivates me to keep doing more. And I think also trying to find the time that you work best at. I'm nocturnal. I work best at night. I find myself up between like the hours of like 11 and 2 in the morning, usually working on W3 schools, trying to teach myself HTML and CSS right now. So I'm working on that. I'm working on building a website for my dad. So I think just trying to find the time that you work best at, jotting things down that you need to get done throughout the day, and trying to eliminate distractions. For me, I've had to delete social media during the week. So Monday through Friday, usually I just delete the apps off of my phone because I find myself getting very distracted with those.
Wow, that's incredible advice too. I mean, I think you all have said some pretty incredibly valuable tidbits and tips and tricks for students to stay focused, stay engaged, and then hopefully make the best out of everything that's happening around us. So my last question really is about next steps for you all, or in the old school traditional thing where you go to school or you get a skill and then you go to work, right? And I'm saying these words with the literal sense of there's a difference between a job and a career. So if you understand what those are, then I'm just going to repeat this as like, if you just want to get a job to earn money, to do something to make a good income, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But if you have a career, a lot of times you could take a job and turn it into a career, or maybe go directly into a career. And so there's this whole passion, right? There's a love. Each of you shared a particular love for learning in a certain area. So those careers that you're going into are very important. And now that we've shifted to this, you know, entering into a post-COVID virtual world, you've shared some tips and tricks for the high school students. You've shared about, you know, missing, you know, the socialism, the camaraderie. So the real question boils down to professional development and your preparedness. So Power Up IT it used to offer it on Tuesdays, was like, how do you do a resume? How do you dress for success? How do you speak for success? How do you manage your finances as a college student, right? Dr. Michael Wilson has shared, and as well as Mark Skipper, Juliet Mitchell, and many others have shared information along this particular pathway. You as college students and you as next entering into the work world, what advice would you give to a high school student to better prepare them for entering into the job and or career market? And I will start with, I guess we'll start with Tariq. I'm kind of curious what you're going to start out with.
I'd say in terms of preparation for the job field, working yourself as in a whole person, meaning that, getting a job is not purely an academic thing. It's also a social thing. And so, so for example, my degree program, a lot of us, no matter what school you go to, traditionally learn the same basics. And I'm sure that's how it is with, similar fields. And so at a lot of the interviews I've been to, they weren't necessarily as much concerned about the academic side of things, but they were more concerned about who I was as a person, who I was as a leader, how I engaged socially. Because, in a job or career, you're not just, working on a computer all day. You actually have to engage with people throughout the day and whatnot. And so they were looking at me as a whole person. My most recent internship I got, but there was not one single question asked about engineering to me. It was purely about who I am as a leader and as a person and how I deal with certain situations.
Wow. I've heard that happens, because you have so think about going to school, you have the transcript, you have your school history, you have your community service, things that all get presented to them ahead of time. So obviously even make it to the interview is an incredible feat. Well, thank you for sharing. And so, Amiyah, can you answer that same question about professional development preparedness and any potential jobs or anticipated careers you think you want to dive into?
Yeah. So I guess when it comes to professionalism, I think it's just all about, like your poise and how you come in and being positive. For me personally, I've had an internship and just like knowing that, it's not just, what you can do, but it's how you treat people. It's how you come every day. And I think a lot of people really just assume that, you're just going to be by yourself, but, it's a lot more than that. So for me, I guess just personally for me, how I dealt with it is just realizing that, this is not just a job. This is, this is an experience. I'm making resources that, I can eventually use in the future. And I'm making friends that I still talk to this day. And also personally for me, resources when it came to things like Genesis Works that can automatically get you an internship and prepare you for, professionalism and interviews like that. And recently, when it comes to being in college, I just got this interview prep course. It's called Code Path. And it's overall, it automatically guarantees you a interview with places like Microsoft, Google, Lyft, and these big places that you never thought, wow, I can be interviewing for them. And they overall prep you for the fact that you do have to be professional, what to wear, how to shake their hand, and using your resources like that. And places like Lyft, well, personally, I want to go to Lyft, but places like Lyft, they do technical interview as well. So like for me, I'm like, okay, I got to be professional, but also knowing that those big places, you have to code in front of them and you have to make applications in front of them. So I guess just using your resources when it comes to interview prep courses and places that do teach you how to make a resume and do teach you how to, shake the hand correctly. So I think when it comes to professionalism, for me personally, I used a lot of my resources that overall were free. These things didn't cost any money. And they're in the community and supporting your community when it comes to taking these courses and showing your, involvement and overall you're getting help at the end of the day. So yeah, resources were really great for me.
Well, remind me after this, and I know we're going to be wrapping up here after we speak with Lindsey, but I need to introduce you to the BDPA folks in the Twin Cities, Fred Blockton, Kelly Martin, because Lyft and other Google, Microsoft, all the major tech companies are all sponsors and supporters of Black Data Processing Associates. And I have an inside with them too. So we'll talk about that afterwards.
Absolutely.
Definitely remind me that we need to talk about that. So Lindsey, the same exact question, preparedness from your perspective and professional development and the importance of all those things.
So one thing I would say, definitely check out the previous videos that we have on YouTube, on the Minnesota STEM Partnership YouTube channel. the resume building, talking about LinkedIn, what's appropriate on social media. I know social media is one thing that can get people in a lot of trouble going into interviews. Companies look at that information and, you know, they don't want to see you out here wilding out, talking bad about people. It's not going to be a good look when you go into an interview, and you may not even get an interview because of it. And also with the resume building, Michael Wilson offered to look over people's resumes and edit them if you send them to him. So he went through a session, and it's on YouTube that you can check out. And I think another big thing is just networking. Who you know, I realized, is kind of more important than what you know sometimes. A lot of people can help you get in the door, or can introduce you to people that can help you with getting you into interviews. So I would definitely say network. And when you meet people, you know, just ask them about themselves. Everyone loves talking about themselves. They like talking about their journey. So when you talk to people and you ask them about yourselves and you really seem engaged and interested in them, and, you know, you come off as a nice person, they're willing to help.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think there is, even as adults, right, there's your who you are, how you show up. And I think each of you have stated something that is equally and all important, is like, you have to show up, right? You just can't be expecting them to give you anything, because they don't actually owe you anything, right? Believe it or not, everything that you've said, everybody has said here, I'm very impressed by, because you have to be prepared for those opportunities. Certain things may hit us. We have to be resilient and bounce back from them. But there's also just basically getting prepared for the future, right? So I want to, whereas the very last question is just anything that you want to say to a high school student, to an 11th or 12th grader, you know, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grader, one thing that you would like to share with them from your experiences. That's the last question we'll have, and then we will wrap up, because it is getting to be about that time. So we'll start in reverse order, and we'll go from Lindsey. Any one thing that you would just hope or wish or say to a high school student?
I guess the only thing that I can say is, you know, just stay motivated. Don't feel defeated when you come across things that are challenging to you, and reach out to people. People are willing to help if you're explaining to them that you're having a problem, or you don't know what direction you want to go in. I've met a lot of great people since I've decided to go through this, you know, coding journey, that, you know, everyone's willing to help. They're willing to give their input or their advice. So, you know, just listen and take everything in.
Perfect. Amiyah, anything that you would like to share?
I guess the one thing that I would be able to say is just, you can do it. You know, I think when it comes to circumstance and you know, just even letting people tell you, like, this may not be something that's good for you, just don't listen. You can always accomplish anything you put your mind to, even though that's so cliche. Even if you want to do something, you can absolutely do it, no matter where you come from, what your circumstance is, what anyone has told you. Everything, like literally anything is possible. So just definitely stay motivated, stay who you are, and just overall you can do it, you know. So
Yeah, fantastic, beautiful. Tariq.
I'd say that once you find something that, you know, feel engages you, learn it for the sake of learning, and not necessarily, you know, only for the sake of trying to find employment or not. I feel like learning for the sake of learning shows that you truly love something. If it's something that will, you know, wake you up out of your sleep and you might go work on or something like that, I'd say that, then I would say, you know, you found something that, you know, is something that you really want to engage in, and something that you'll really do well with, because it's something that you'll keep on, you know, persisting on whenever a problem happens, or whenever there's a problem, it's something that you'll keep engaging over and over again. You won't give up on it. I found that a lot. I was doing a lot of my programming classes where I literally couldn't go to sleep because I kept running through this code in my head, and I was having so much fun doing it.
All right, tap into that passion. I sincerely understand that. Well, on behalf of Power Up IT, Minnesota State, Web Demos, the Minnesota STEM Partnership, we all appreciate you young folks taking your time and energy and sharing directly with our students about your experiences and advice on how they can be better people, better prepared, and get into the world of technology and engineering. So on behalf of Lindsey Wilson and myself, the Power Up IT group, you all have a wonderful day, have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for closing out our last session with a great college day. So have a great day, great weekend, and we will talk and see you all very soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
All righty. Bye-bye.